I was reading somewhere in a slightly longer term, you'll have jobs such as machine personality designer, right? So what does it tell me? That tells me that over a period of time, you need marketers who are obviously comfortable in their subject and marketing, but they're also comfortable in technology. What is important is that you have to know what levels of intervention as a brand you should be doing with your consumers. You need to know how much is enough. But I think more importantly, it is also this whole idea that you have to engage at a certain level. I mean, remember, there's a lot of content around. Having a lot of content around is not the answer. Right. Having a lot of relevant content that is able to deliver certain levels of perceived value becomes very important. I think the next 10, 15 years of education is so different to what possibly your 30 odd years or 25 odd years for any institution were like. Business schools have to recognize that.
All right, so we're sitting at the heart of IMT Ghaziabad, this colorful campus, this lush green campus, which always elevates your mood the time when you walk in here. And today with me, I have a very special guest. I have the director of IMT Ghaziabad with me. I have with me Dr. Vishal Talwar. Vishal has been an instrumental academician, if I would have to say. For the last 25 years, you have been teaching at different capacities and you have been a director as well as dean, and you have taught at London School of Economics as well, Vishal. So welcome, Vishal, to InsideIIM, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Vishal, let's start with the time when you were doing your MBA. What sort of changes do you see now from the time when you were doing your business school graduation, when you were seeing things changing in India for that matter?
Well, I think a lot of change. Right? We're obviously talking here about 20, 25 years back. There's a lot of change in terms of expectations, a lot of change in terms of curriculum, a lot of changes in terms of how this curriculum is delivered, a lot of change in terms of the nature of roles and the jobs of careers that people are getting. I think a lot of transformation has taken place within the management education sector. A lot of these changes, many of the organizations, many of the institutions are being able to tide over these changes through more focus on faculty selection, more focus on research. How are you integrating a lot of management education? How are you relating a lot of domain knowledge along with technology, right, as well as stuff around holistic development?
The next move that you made was going to LSE, right? You open up to certain things in your life that probably can happen only when you go to a place like this, right? So in terms of learning, in terms of knowledge gathering, how was an experience LSE was for you? And do you think that you definitely have gotten something back from there that you sort of inculcate in the places that you go here?
I think yes, the shift from Manchester into the London School of Economics, that itself taught me a great deal. I think there were a lot of learnings. Am I saying that I was a very good teacher in the classroom right from day one? I wasn't. Right? It was a learning process. Students used to come along, and through the students I got to know that there is an ethos, there's a culture. There is this whole idea of what, how, and why of learning, wherein students who are committed to the learning process, they are happy to look at the what and the how themselves. Right. Many times they're coming in to know the why, right? And London School of Economics as an institution has predominantly focused a great deal on the why side. Why is this happening? Why is that taking place? Why is this phenomenon existing? Why is there change? And automatically, once you are addressing the whys about why a particular phenomenon happens, or why a particular concept exists, or why people behave in a certain manner, the what and the how then becomes more easy to relate to.
Do you think in the education system of India, if you want to talk about, this why is present? Do you think there's a lot of work that needs to be done so that this why can start from a very beginning?
It's not necessarily, let's say, about the Indian education system per se, but I think depending on the nature of how education has happened over a period of time, and I'm not just talking about higher education, I'm talking about primary education. I'm
Right.
talking about secondary education, where a lot of the focus for a long period of time has been on, being able to learn something, possibly as an output for an examination. That's, in my opinion, half the learning, right? You're learning to be able to expand your horizons. You're learning to be able to then apply those concepts in the real life or in, somewhere close to you kind of context. And I think true learning happens when that happens, when you're learning a concept and you have the ability to apply that concept into a context, right? If that doesn't happen, your learning or whatever you've kind of put into your mind, which you believe is learning, will then dissipate over a period of time. Or
Right.
we might feel good, hey, we got a great mark, we got great CGPA, but then what happens thereafter? Is that of, how useful is it when you transition, let's say, into a career? That's what matters a great deal.
There's also focus towards, assessing or judging students basis the kind of marks that they have attained or the kind of performances that they have had in their academics. Sometimes what we do is we essentially don't assess the person, right, as who the person is and what their strengths are probably. And we just look at the numbers when we are making that decision. Do you think that process somehow makes student a rote learner in India?
If you look at management education institutions, if you look at progressive management institutions, business schools, a lot of them have over a period of time been able to create a larger base of parameters on which they select the suitable candidates, right? Yes, to a certain extent you would have, let's say, a competitive score or what you've gained academically from a percentage perspective or your performance in the class as one element. But I think that's one element, a major element, a strong element. But beyond that, I think it's also important to understand many of the other aspects. It's also important to understand many of the other things, the behavioral things, the accomplishments, a lot of things that you're capable of doing, a lot of things that possibly for a business school signify your leadership potential, your ability to take people with you into confidence and take them forward to meet an objective. I think a lot of this is obviously important. It's gaining more importance, and I think it'll play a major role going forward.
Let's talk about the processes that you're setting here to select students. How do you make sure that people you're selecting to train for the next 2 years, because it's basically the ground for them to become somebody that you envision them to become, right? Or maybe the kind of dreams that they have, they want to nurture themselves and become the leaders for the future. How do you do that selection? What is exactly the criteria that you look at? And do you see people as people?
Yes, I think we should all see people as people. We should not be seeing people as numbers. And I think at IMT Ghaziabad, we have an evolved mechanism to be able to understand potential of incoming students. The kind of selection criteria we use is something that goes beyond, let's say, your competitive score, goes beyond your academic marks or whatever else. I think we want to know whether we are able to help you move from point A to another point, right? Can we add value to you? Because you have certain ambitions, you have certain objectives, you have certain reasons for applying to a place like IMT Ghaziabad, right? So automatically that means that we want to understand you more holistically. We want to understand you with a little bit more depth. Your critical thinking capability, your writing capabilities, your communication capabilities. What have you possibly achieved so far, right? And that's the reason why in the last 1 year odd year, we've also started, looking at the profiling of the students, because what we do realize is that while your competitive scores are absolutely something that we should be looking at, but at the same time, we should look at other things. What have you done so far? Because at times, what you've done so far also indicates what you possibly can do later on. That's why you would notice we have, performers, we have, sports people amongst, within the cohort.
Let's talk a little bit about marketing. Things are changing rapidly. Things are evolving, especially after COVID. Marketing has also seen a shift that we might not have realized in the last 1 decade or so, right? Keeping all these changes in mind, how important do you think it is to keep students abreast of the changes? That's one. And making sure that, with the changing dynamics of the market, they are also ready for the next 5 years.
Look, marketing, if you look at its evolution, right, from the 20s, 30s or whatever, it's essentially, a lot of its bedrock is in economics, right, where this whole idea of matching demand and supply. But if you look at the evolution of marketing over a period of time, if you look at when television came in, when retail revolutions came in, that started requiring a lot of understanding of things such as sociology, psychology, behavior. Strategic management started coming into marketing thought. A lot of these evolved, and then you started having things moving from transactional marketing, let's say, to relationship marketing, into interaction and value, service quality. These started becoming more important, or the focus areas. If you look at marketing at this moment of time, it's not just about future trends. If you look at marketing right now, there's a lot of focus on the integration of offline and online, this whole idea of omni-channel, right? Consumers search somewhere, consume somewhere else. A lot of these factors are very important. This whole idea of a lot of information to the consumer, leading to more different kinds of decision making, becomes important. Personalization becomes very important. So I think there's a huge amount of change. This change was almost there. Some levels of this change has got, in a way, intensified, amplified, with technological change, with what we've just been through as far as COVID is concerned. If you look at the job scenario, I was reading somewhere in a slightly longer term, you'll have jobs such as machine personality designer, right? So what does it tell me? That tells me that over a period of time, you need marketers who are obviously comfortable in their subject and marketing, but they're also comfortable in technology.
So, Vishal, in your opinion, what are some of these campaigns that you can think of in India that has been done in terms of marketing, if we say, that has stood the test of time?
If you look at the Incredible India campaign, that's been running successfully for a long period of time. If I'm not wrong, 2001, 2002 was the first time they started. What was the objective? The objective was around this whole idea of nation marketing or nation branding or place marketing or place branding. And they used a lot of mechanisms. I think that was one example of how you tended to, in that time, of course, you tended to use more traditional methods of using print, using hoardings, using outdoor, using possibly television as a mechanism to capture the imagination of let's say someone who is looking at choices, right? Someone who's looking at, okay, what are the top 5 destinations to travel in the world for this particular holiday, right? And the idea was to try and break into that segment, to break into that kind of a consideration set. So I think that particular campaign did capture the imagination. If I look at the data, if I look at the numbers, if I look at the spends, if I look at the spend per tourist, that actually did go up during that time. And I think that's one campaign from an Indian perspective that I can think about. That did stand the test of time.
Vishal, gone are the days when in-your-face advertising, was a fad. Now we see a lot of advertisers as well and brands. They want to associate themselves with a social equity, right? They want to be known as brands who care and try and make their customers feel like if you use their products, you believe in something, right? Where did this come from, if I have to ask you, in a country like India where, culture changes every 200 kilometers? How do you make sure as a marketer that you fit there and you do the right thing?
I think this whole idea of marketing and this whole idea of one size fits all possibly is something which is kind of outlived its existence. Right? Marketers essentially means that you have to be able to immerse yourself in the context, in the region that you belong. Right? And if you look at India, the markets are fragmented. So automatically that means that the marketer has to be able to relate to the context or the region that they are essentially responsible for. Because what's happening here is that because of varied reasons, consumer education, consumer information, technological prevalence, a lot of these things mean that the levels of information asymmetry that existed earlier has actually come down completely. So automatically, what is important is that you have to know what levels of intervention as a brand you should be doing with your consumers. You need to know how much is enough. But I think more importantly, it is also this whole idea that you have to engage at a certain level. I mean, remember, there's a lot of content around. Having a lot of content around is not the answer.
Right.
Having a lot of relevant content that is able to deliver certain levels of perceived value becomes very important.
And do you think because of this, digital marketing becomes as important as it is today?
Well, I mean, digital marketing, I remember, in my advertising days as well, then, we used to look at it, okay, 10%, 15% spend of the client on digital, okay, fine. But look at it now, right? It's, for a lot of clients, essentially it's digital. For a lot of clients, it's 50-50, right? For a lot of clients, it's 70-30. So you do realize that the digital space has captured the imagination because that's where the consumers are resident. That's where the interaction is happening, right? That's where your ability to extend your story is actually happening, and it's happening for a long period of time. It's just that a lot more people are spending a lot more time on certain devices and certain media, and that has completely uh, turned upside down your whole strategy.
And how are you making sure that your students here are well versed with this, with the changing trends and the time?
Well, IMT Ghaziabad is a very industry engaged institution, right? A lot of our faculty have industry experience. A lot of our faculty are able to bring in very contemporary contexts and concepts into the classroom. The other is the fact that we all the time we have mechanisms or methods by which people who've been there, done that, our alumni, other industry guests, CEOs, they come in, are able to then bring in a lot of these ideas, bring in a lot of these stories to then validate or enrich a student's understanding. These are ways and means by which we are able to, let's say, ensure that the knowledge is contemporary. We're able to ensure that the knowledge incorporates what's happening around them at that particular moment of time, helps in their abilities and their decision making. At the same time, if you look at the kind of some of the clubs and committees we have, right? If you look at, let's say, the E-Cell for that matter, if you look at Markup for that matter, if you look at some of our committees for that matter, a lot of these committees are doing a lot of engagement with people out there, with different other schools, having competitions. I think these are ways and means by which we ensure that the learning is not necessarily out of date.
Vishal, for the students who are watching this, for marketing enthusiasts who are watching this conversation, what would be your take? What are the 3 skills for the future or for the time that is now that you absolutely need to acquire to be a better marketer?
Might sound cliched, but some levels of out-of-box thinking is fundamentally very important, right? But out-of-box thinking is varied. It varies because now marketing has many different kinds of diversified careers, right? So it's not as if you're front end, as if you're going into the market, as if you're sales or your brand. But nowadays you have analysts, you have category managers, you have product people. But fundamentally, I still believe that you have to be able to transcend and think beyond what something is telling you, or some text is telling you.
What is your vision for this particular institute? What are you trying to build here? It's been 1.5 years, if I'm not wrong, that you have been here. You must have changed a few processes as well after coming in here. What are you looking at making IMT Ghaziabad?
IMT Ghaziabad, it's a 42-year-old establishment. It's one of those management institutions or business schools. The reason for its existence right from the beginning was there was not enough appreciation of practice-driven management education. That was a fundamental reason why we came along, and obviously in the last 42 years we've contributed in that direction. What we also have to remember, right? We obviously have great faculty. We have great students. We have great alumni. Everybody's getting together, all the stakeholders in the system, to ensure that we are moving up constantly. At the same time, something that I keep thinking about all the time, and something that is kind of percolating into the kind of strategy that we have now, and the kind of measures we put in place in terms of what we analyze, what we study, what are the outcomes we're looking for. We do realize that I think the next 10-15 years of education is so different to what possibly your 30 odd years or 25 odd years for any institution were like. Business schools have to recognize that. What you also have to remember is that the whole regulatory system, right? The Indian regulatory system is also looking at certain objectives, is also trying to understand, hey, can I possibly move on from a 26% GER, a gross enrollment ratio, into 50%? Now, you can't double the number of universities you have from a 900 odd universities or educational institutions or whatever the number is, and suddenly double them overnight to be able to achieve that 50% goal. That also means that you will notice kind of changes that are happening in terms of being able to do 2 degrees at the same time, moving or transitioning from 3-year degrees into 4-year degrees, or having the option of doing a 1-year master's and a 2-year master's, the academic bank of credits, all these things together, making it obviously a very exciting time for the longer term. And I think IMT Ghaziabad, as we speak, is readying itself for that kind of world.
Last question that I want to ask you. We all know that there is a information overload, right? Internet is providing you everything, right? You go online, you open YouTube, and probably within a week or two, you might know how digital marketing works. In such a scenario, in such a context, how relevant are the B schools today? And do you think they'll cease to exist?
Look, there's information overload, you're absolutely right. But how do we know what to look for, right? There's obviously information overload, there's an information implosion. There is, at the same time, confusion about sources, confusion about legibility, confusion about whether it's technically right. There's so much out there that we as academics, right, we as true faculty have also transitioned ourselves for being a sage on the stage to a guide on the side. Essentially, we as faculty are people who are on the side, mentoring students, getting the best out of them to enable a certain kind of future. So I think if you're talking about a more traditional orientation towards how, let's say, business education may have been doing, the kind of, let's say, what is taught in the classroom, more theory orientation, maybe assessing just through exams and using that as a barometer. A lot of us have moved on from that. That's what is going to work in the longer term, right? So automatically, if you look at it from an Indian context, a good business education, business school education is obviously here to stay. Nomenclature, the content of the curriculum, a lot of this can obviously vary, right? But if I look at it, what does a business school education offer? I think that's something that is here to stay.
Thank you very much, Vishal. Thank you for your time. I think whoever is listening to this conversation, they might have gotten a perspective about the B School learning, marketing in general, and the sector knowledge that you have shared with us. If you want to ask further question, do go to the comment section and ask Vishal these questions. We'll make sure that we'll send some of these questions to him. If you want to know more about the institute that Vishal is director of now and he's trying to create, there's a link in the description as well. Go check that out. Do tell us how you liked this conversation and what do you want us to cover next, and we'll try and bring that up for you guys. Thank you once again, Vishal. It has been nice talking to you. Pleasure.